Welcome to the Oxygen Podcast, navigating life and breaking through the chains of limiting beliefs. I am your host, Jen. Today's topic is all about why change is hard, what we can do, how to identify when we're getting stuck in the hard of change, and how to break through that. Welcome. I am so happy you're here. This is one of the topics that is near and dear to my heart. This idea of breaking the chains of limiting beliefs, of negative thoughts. And this is something that I've worked on and have struggled with for years. And it wasn't until I really started learning the concepts of what I'm about to share with you. One of my favorite people to study and to really tap into on the daily is Dr. Joe Dispenza. If that name is new to you, Google him. He is amazing. He's a neuroscientist who teaches all about how our thoughts impact our reality, our personality, and create our life in a scientific manner, in language that's easy to understand and digest. And I am hoping to share some of that today, some of the topics that have been these aha moments for me. I think for me, the number one thing was realizing that we think 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. And of those thoughts, 90% are the same thoughts as yesterday. So what does that mean? We're bringing 90% of what we thought yesterday into today, and then 90% of that into tomorrow. And what does that mean? That means that we're staying the same. It's only through awareness that we can actually make some changes. I love that thought because when I get stuck in my story, and I'll talk about that too, we all have these stories or these limiting beliefs that keep us anchored onto our past. If I'm being honest, my story has been for a long time feeling of unworthiness. And I brought that all the way from my childhood into my adult life. And it wasn't until I started really diving deep into the impact of my thoughts on my life that I was able to start to rewrite my story. And that's my hope in sharing this podcast with you today, is just to give you a few tips and tools that you can start to rewrite the story of your life and start to really connect with that person that you want to be. And the first thing I would say is to identify what is your story. And your story is the thing that you tell yourself over and over again. If I'm using myself as an example, my story was lack of money, lack of belief in myself, lack of worthiness of success. I grew up, my parents loved us. I had a very loving family, but my parents worked very hard to raise us. They worked very hard to get the means to help us throughout our life. Money was something that we've always struggled with growing up. I remember having powdered milk and pink powdered juices and no frills. Do you even know what no frills are? It's like the brand that has no name. And hand-me-downs and all these things were a part of my childhood, a part of my story, that money doesn't grow on trees. I don't know if you can relate to that, but I brought that all the way into my adulthood. And I got stuck. I got stuck in that story of not enough. And what I was able to do is start to identify. So what is the story that you keep telling yourself? It's something that comes up on a daily for you because that's how embedded it is in your nervous system. I encourage you to dive deep into yourself today. Write down that story. And then here's the other thing. There's triggers that cause us to react or go back to that story. And for me, a lot of the triggers have been anytime I had to pay something that is uncomfortable for me, pay my bills, or if there's a large ticket item that I want to do, or actually making the time, energy, and the means to invest in myself has been a few triggers along the way. But here's the thing, if you can identify the trigger and you can identify your old story, that moment you can decide, am I going to continue telling that story? And I don't know about you, but I talk to myself all the time. So the conversation I always have when I'm able to identify that I'm stuck in that story is, I say, Jen, do you really want to tell the same story? Aren't you ready to write a new story? Aren't you ready to create that life? And the answer is yes. And that's what I want for you today. First, identify what is your story? What is the story that keeps you stuck? What is the story that prevents you from creating that person? And sometimes it might just be like your worthiness, lack of knowledge, whatever your story is. Take a moment and identify. And if you're feeling stuck in your story, reach out to me. Sometimes when somebody else listens to us talk, it's easier for them to see the story that we're stuck in. We all have that story. It's normal and natural. So just identifying it, having awareness of your triggers, and then not making the same decision you've been making over and over again. It's this idea is why change is hard is because we're so used to our story. We're on autopilot when we get up in the morning. And that autopilot is what's comfortable for our minds and body. And being comfortable is what the mind and body wants. And so when we're trying to make changes hard because it's different, it's uncomfortable, it's unfamiliar, and all of that causes our minds and body to really be on alert. This is new. Your mind and body's like, what's going on? I don't know if I like this. I don't know what I want to do. And you know what? I want to stay in my comfort zone. And in staying in that comfort zone, we stay stuck. And that's why change is hard. It's hard because we think 90% of the same thoughts as yesterday. If you think about it, that's a lot. So you have to have awareness, and having awareness is the key to success. And having awareness, it sounds so simple, but it's not. It's just like this aha moment. I'm telling the same story. I'm doing it again. If I leave you with anything today, it's just identifying your story that has kept you stuck. Because what I know to be true is we are all meant for greatness. We are all gifted. The creator, whoever you believe in, if it's God, if it's universal energy, source, whatever the higher being that you believe in, that gave you a gift. And that gift is what you share with us and share with the world. And we all have that special gift. We're all unique in what we have, our love to serve, to thrive. And that is what I'm hoping to unlock. That is what I'm hoping you can tap into. Because I know for myself, I can go down that negative road and go into, I can't do it. It's not for me. It's for everybody else. And that's not true. That is an old story. And I want you to be able to recognize when you start to tell that old story and have a conversation with yourself and tell a new story. What is your new story going to be? What is the person that you're trying to create? This podcast is about navigating this thing called life. We're only here one time, and in being here one time, my wish for you and for me is that we show up every day for ourselves. We show up and we live our best life, and we create that life that we want. So I'm going to recap today with why change is hard is because we're thinking 90% of the same thoughts as yesterday. Change happens when we can break through that unconscious autopilot of living. And when we can break through that unconscious autopilot, we can start to lay the foundation for the new person, the new change, the new being that we want to create. And it comes down to having an awareness when you're telling the old story, having an awareness when a trigger has occurred, and having the awareness to step into the power, step into the person that you're supposed to be. If you found this podcast beneficial, please share it with a friend. Like, subscribe, so we can all start feeling good and living good. If there's ever a topic you want me to touch on, message me, reach out to me. My website's oxygen.life. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Oxygen, OXIJEN. I hope this was helpful. I look forward to seeing you soon.